The Movies of the Meek, where we watch made-for-TV movies and miniseries so you don't have to. From Gia to Xenon, Hysteria to Sybil, welcome to Movies of the Meek.
Lathe of Heaven is the story of a young man named George Orr who is sent to a psychiatrist because he is having, as he calls it, affective dreams. And they are effective because they are shaping reality. And his problem is that whenever the reality is shaped by the dream, he's the only one that remembers the prior reality. And so it's when he meets with this psychiatrist, this man Bill, when he meets with him, the psychiatrist actually eventually on the second or third dream session that they have together, he starts to realize that George is correct. And so he then decides to shape the world in a way that he deems to be best.
That's a great summary. I really like this movie, Max.
Oh yeah.
It was a movie of ideas, I would say. It's like the concept of him dreaming, and then those dreams changing reality was really cool.
Yeah.
The intro is him waking up, is him waking up after a nuclear explosion.
Yep.
Which like threw me for a loop. I was like writing notes. I was like, is this like, what is happening here? Because after he falls down and then he wakes up again in his bed, and I was like, was that a dream? I had no idea what this movie was about either. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then it all kind of ties together at the end with that part. But so his main power, he can change reality, and like you said, no one remembers the change.
Yes.
So he tells a story. Is one of his first sessions with the doctor, that when he was a kid, he dreamt that his aunt visited his family, which is a really weird scene. She starts like hitting on him.
Yeah.
And they like start making out. There's all the weird stuff. So he has a dream essentially that she died.
Yeah.
And he wakes up and that's the reality, and no one remembers it. And I was like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. No one remembers that she even came to visit in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. She died like in a car accident or something. But so his power, he changed reality, but no one can remember, which is where I get confused in this movie. And maybe you can help me understand this, but so every time he dreams and he wakes up, only he retains the memories of the reality before he dreamt. Correct?
Yes.
So at which
except as the movie goes on, George Orr's psychiatrist also is aware.
But when does that switch happen? And I think at a certain point it happens, but he doesn't tell George Orr that he knows.
So that happens actually at the second dream.
When he changes the weather. Because the first dream, he just changes a painting in the doctor's office.
Yes.
And when he wakes up from that dream, the doctor does not... To him, that has always been his painting.
Yes.
But to George Orr, he remembers the previous painting. In the second session, the doctor tells George Orr to dream of sunny weather. And this takes place in Portland, so they're used to like heavy rain. And he wakes up, and Portland's known as the Sunshine City, apparently.
Yeah, for the past 2 years. It's been sunshine.
The doctor, however, when George Orr's dreaming, realizes it's happening. He sees it change, and then after George Orr wakes up, he's aware. So, like, he remembers too. This is where I get confused. Is like, why in that second session does the doctor now remember? Not only like he remembers when it was the rainy city, and now it's obviously sunny. So what? And then after that, he knows, and then he like keeps it from George Orr for another couple sessions.
So
if you can help me with this,
this actually gets to the end of the movie.
Okay.
Which is at the very end of the movie, you find out George Orr has been dreaming the whole time, and this is actually the last firing of the synapses of his brain because he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what happened is that sequence that happens at the very beginning of the movie, which is you see the water and then you see the explosion and then you see George Orr collapse to the ground. It's in that moment where he had a wish, and his wish was, I wish I was still alive. And then he closed his eyes, and that was him dying. And so, as Freud would say, dreams are wish fulfillment. What we are seeing are his dreams, which are just the fulfillings of the wish of to be alive. And so what's happening is, because all the things within our dreams are representations of either wishes that can be fulfilled, or they're representations of ideas of ourselves or parts of ourselves, his psychoanalyst slash psychologist, he slowly over time becomes kind of like a self-aware part of George's mind. And so that's basically his transformation over the course of the movie is becoming more and more aware of the ability to shape this world. And it's only at the very end of the movie where it's the trippiest and most fucking amazing sequence of all time, where that character is able to break through the world that George Orr has made for them. And he basically realizes that, he's just a part of a dream, and that's what drives him insane.
Oh my God. That's what happened at the end of the movie?
Yeah.
Holy shit. So this whole thing is a dream.
Yeah.
That's why the rules break, because the reality that it presents never existed. Oh. That's crazy, Max.
Yeah, and so that's,
okay.
when he's...
That's why he goes fucking crazy at the end.
Yeah.
Because he realizes he's just a figment of George Orr's brain. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And that's why, when George is with Heather and they walk up to him and they see him and they go, what? He goes, what happened to him? And they go, well, he was on the verge of a breakthrough and then he went insane. And then he looks at the doctor and he goes... You saw it, didn't you? You saw the world after April, which is, the world that, George Orr's body is now decomposing in. And, he looks at him like in a moment of clarity, and it's kind of just like, yeah, I realized that I don't exist. None of this exists. And that really we're just living in some wish fulfillment in your dead brain.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God. And one of the things that's really amazing about this is that a lot of the stuff that they use in terms of dreams and in terms of like psychoanalysis and the ways in which our brain works is incredibly accurate. One of the things, if we're talking about the first dream, where he's seeing this picture on the wall of this mountain, and so what Bill is doing is he's leading him through these dreams using this thing that he calls the actuator.
Yeah.
And so as he's basically guiding him through dreams, like he's forcing him to dream with this machine, which as the movie goes on, it gets cooler and cooler looking.
And that was one of my biggest issues in the beginning, was like, why does this guy have this machine? Like, why? It's because like George Orr's creating this on the fly. And that's why the machine gets so fucking crazy at the end.
Yeah.
Holy shit. All right, keep going.
And so he basically he guides him through this dream, and the thing that's interesting is that he just tells him basically to dream about a wonderful horse. And the thing that's interesting is that it starts with that first image of the mountain, and so then it zooms in on the mountain, and there's a pack of horses that are now running on that mountain, and then it turns into just the horse. And so then when we are pulled away from the dream, then the horse is just projected on the wall where the photo of the mountain was.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
The whole thing's amazing. And also, one of the things that's really interesting is that, Bill is getting mad at George Orr because he's like, your mind twists everything that I say. And so, when it gets to the point where he decides that he should try and have George fix the overpopulation problem.
Oh, that's such a good one.
The logical thing that George's mind comes to is that there should be a fucking plague.
Yeah. He goes dark.
It just fucking kills 6 billion people.
Yeah.
And so a similar one that happens is afterwards, that's dream number 2. After that, they decide what they should do is fix all of the wars, because they have a plague and overpopulation's no longer a problem, but they're still somehow going to go to war with people. And so he tells George, he's like, make sure that there's peace on Earth between all men. And so of course aliens end up coming.
Really cool looking aliens.
Really cool looking aliens. The aliens are fucking beautifully designed.
Yeah. And I love how they stick around for all future realities.
Oh yeah.
They come obviously hostile at first, and then George Orr dreams them to be peaceful aliens at one point. And then they're just kind of hanging around through the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Working in an antique store.
But yeah, and so one of the things that's funny is that it becomes kind of like a case of semantics, where it's like, if you're gonna suggest something to a dreaming person, it has to be as exact as possible, because otherwise the brain is just gonna tear it apart. And that's one of the things the psychoanalyst Christopher Bollas talked about, that when he had a case with a schizophrenic patient. And what he told her one time in a session was basically how, she kind of takes her problems and she just exacerbates them. And what she does is she'll do whatever she can to make these problems drag on as long as possible. Now, the next time that they had a session, she talked about how she was being haunted by a dragon. And how basically it was his fault that this dragon was attacking her, and this dragon wouldn't let her go. And it took him a little while to basically come to the conclusion that when he said drag on, that manifested in her mind as a dragon. And so basically she was now being haunted by a dragon. Jeez. And he was the root of the dragon. It obviously wasn't, once again, her dragging on a situation. It was the fact that he was now telling her that she was dragging on this situation, which manifested in an actual visible dragon in her life.
That's crazy.
And so it's one of those things where they beautifully show how the mind can just kind of take something so minuscule and so small and just completely deteriorate it and turn it into something insane. Now, it's around this time that George has a seemingly throwaway line where he says that he daydreams about a cabin by the ocean. And it's also around this time where George Orr decides to meet with a lawyer because, they have had their second effective dream. And the second effective dream is the one where they change the sky. And it's at that point where, he thinks that this old guy might be manipulating him, and all he wants to do is to stop fucking dreaming.
Yeah, that's why he was taking the drugs at the beginning of the movie. Yeah,
that's why he's taking the drugs at the beginning of the movie, and that's also the doctor does prescribe him a drug that allows him to technically not dream. And so, he meets with Heather, who's his lawyer, and Heather is like, yeah, I mean, I think you're insane, because every single time that he tries describing something to her, he sounds like a crazy person. And he's like, you know what, fine, I'm just gonna leave. And then as he's about to leave, is when basically she's like, well, I didn't say that you don't have a case. I said you probably don't have a case. And then he's like, I probably don't have a case. And he sits back down and they talk for a little while. And she's like, all right, I'll go check it out because it sounds like he's doing some unethical stuff. And then going in for the third dream is where we really start to get into
right?
This is the plague,
Yeah.
and this is where we really start getting into like the heavy philosophical themes of this movie, which is where the doctor says, today we're going to make history, George. Today I'm going to do what no politician, no scientist, and no philosopher has ever done. I'm going to make the world right.
I'm surprised that the doctor decided to do the plague effective dream as the lawyer was watching the session.
I was also shocked by that.
I was like, you would think he would do something harmless that seemingly had no effect on reality, so that she would just go away.
Yeah.
But no, he decides to try to fix the population problem.
And that's once again, because of the fact that she is also a part of George's brain, she stays there, and she's also now aware of everything that just happened.
Yes, but then she forgets at some point because of a reality change again.
Yeah.
It's some crazy shit happens.
Yeah. Like, he turns all the people of the world silver.
Yeah, that was cool. That was a ballsy effect.
My favorite is when that happens. Bill gets so excited and he's like, yes, that's the most logical way you could have done this.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and so he causes an accidental plague, and they kill 6 billion people.
Yeah, I was very confused as what was about to happen. But then, he wakes up and he's like, I just killed 6 billion people.
Yeah.
Like the best line of this movie.
And it's right after that George confronts him again, and he's basically like, you know what you're fucking doing. And Bill is just like, all right, I'll be honest. I do know what I'm doing. And he's like, but isn't that the purpose of man on Earth? To act, to change things, to run things, to build a better world. And then George responds with the greatest response that you could have, which is, things don't have purposes. I don't know if life has a purpose. I can't say that it matters. It is. We are. I want it to stop.
Yeah, he is so casual this whole movie. He's like all this crazy shit's happening, and he's just like, I need to take a nap. Like, I need to go home.
And that's also so the next effective dream that happens is when the doctor says that he wants peace on Earth, and then the aliens come, and then it's after that the doctor, the doctor's slowly been making more and more improvements to his fucking his laboratory, making it nicer and nicer and nicer with better and better funding. The one thing that I love is at one point the doctor is just like, go home, George. And he's like, I don't even know where that is. It's one of those things where it's like, same. Like, the world has been going through drastic shifts, and all he's been doing is sleeping. Of course he doesn't know where anything is. But it's around this time where, his daydream actually seeps in, and he ends up having that house by the ocean. And so when the doctor's just like, just go home, and he's like, okay, and he just wanders around, and then Heather decides to go searching for him, and she finds him by the ocean, and it's at that point, where she goes, you know what, like, maybe I should do a guided dream. And, it's because of this shared experience that, he falls in love with her. But the interesting thing about all of that is that, once again, she's also a figment of his imagination. So even their love is just a wish fulfillment for him, which is why it kind of feels fake and it feels forced. And you're like, oh, I guess they're in love now. And when he makes all the races one race, and then he has another dream where he listens to "I Get By with a Little Help from My Friends." That dream that he has where he dreams about them, embracing, and he sees the white skin meshing with her black skin. And when he wakes up, she's there, and of course they're now married because that's a wish that he would have. I won't say he fetishizes her race because that's me assuming a whole bunch of stuff, but he at the very least is overly conscious of her race and desires her because of that. And when she comes to, they're married and they're madly in love, and that's just, she's not acting of free will of any kind because she's a fucking figment of his imagination that's being forced to be in love with him.
After he changes everyone gray, it's at that point that he loses his ability for a short period, right? Doesn't he get cured after that?
The doctor says that he no longer has the ability, yeah.
But he then goes home and he goes to his cabin and he dreams that night. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, Bill is trying to gain some sort of understanding of the way things are, and if this wasn't all inside of his dream, then that could have potentially worked.
Gotcha.
But because of the fact that it's just a dream that's trying to control his dream
that's
realm.
where I got mixed up. Was I took everything as this is like reality, like and I was like, why is it all these rules? They keep establishing these things and they break them. Yeah. But it's at this point that Bill goes fucking crazy and builds his mega machine that lets him dream. Yeah. And then George Orr battles him in the dream within the dream. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. What's really cool visual effects. I don't even know what the hell I was looking at for 10 minutes.
There's a solid sequence where it's just a shit ton of lasers.
Strobe lights and lasers but
it's just so much fog.
Yeah. It was a really cool effect though. I mean,
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so good. And that's, that's what George actually says. He wakes up to his beautiful wife, Heather, and he goes, "Heather, my beautiful wife, you're brown." And she's like, "This model only comes in one color, baby." That's what she says. I know. It's in that moment of realization, that they're embracing and everything's great, and then all of a sudden she goes, "Something feels fucking weird," and he's like, "Oh yeah, I feel it too," and he's like, "I felt it one time before," and she goes, "When?" And he was like, "On that day in April 4 years ago," which is basically, him remembering what got him to this place, which is the fact that he's dead. And then the realization that Bill is using the machine to try and see outside of the world that they're in, which once again would recognize the fact that they're all dead.
Oh my god. So has George Orr and everyone he's created in his dream been living this reality for 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's what ends up happening is because of the fact that Bill puts himself in the machine, which is this weird James Turrell art piece of solid light and shapes, and he puts himself inside of it. And when that's happening, as George tries to run and confront him, there's flames shooting out of the ground, and the world cracks in half. And that's once again because a part of his brain is basically trying to escape, which is just impossible, which is why that part of his brain fucking loses it. And you could try and figure out what part of that brain he's supposed to represent, but I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to get into is the final dream that George has right before he goes and confronts the doctor, is he ends up meeting with one of the aliens, and this is kind of in a daydreamist sequence, and the alien says something, and it says, If help is wanted, inquire within. Power may be controlled only at the source. Those who heaven helps we call the sons of heaven. They do not reason by using reason. To let understanding stop at what cannot be understood is a high attainment. Those who cannot do it will be destroyed on the lathe of heaven.
That's where we get the title of the movie.
That is where you get the title of the movie.
What does that mean? Break it down, dude.
So this is and there's actually, you know, there's a lot of cool philosophy references in this movie, guys. One of which, of course, would be the concept that my boy Bill, he keeps reiterating, which is the greatest good for the greatest number. Okay. Which is a utilitarian ethical concept, which is basically that, like, what was it? Mill, I think, was the one that basically
Mill?
like, came
Meek Mill?
Meek Mill. Philadelphia's own Meek Mill came to the conclusion that basically, you know, if we need to kill one person in order to save billions of people, then we should, because it's all about the greatest good for the greatest number of people, which is actually contrary to what the alien says when he shows up, which is, do not do unto others that which you do not wish them to do unto you, which the psychologist claims to agree with. He's like, yes, agreed, which I will also say he kind of is like a knockoff Sean Connery, and I loved it. Now, that statement is actually closer to Kantian ethics, which is my boy Immanuel Kant, or Kunt is the way you actually should pronounce it, but no one does. Yeah. But this whole concept, which is to let understanding stop at what cannot be understood, is a high achievement. Those who cannot do it will be destroyed on the lathe of heaven. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. But the one thing is basically like that is like a Kantian notion, which also kind of gets into my baby boy Hegel, who's my favorite, which is basically his pursuit was the concepts of that which we could consider true knowledge and true freedom, which is what I think this whole movie is kind of about, which is the idea that once we become self-aware of not only the choices that we have, but everything that led to those choices, that's when we're truly free to act. And so it's the idea that, you know, to let understanding stop at what cannot be understood, you know, it is something that basically, you know, one of the most important things for Hegel is finding true knowledge, and one of the things is that's important is to understand that the ways in which we acquire knowledge is malleable. And that's something that Hegel would actually borrow a Kantian term, which he used, motion, is the term that he would use for it. And so it's understanding that the ways in which we relate to things and the ways in which things relate to each other is constantly shifting and constantly changing. And so our understanding of things and our understanding of those concepts are bound not only to those concepts, but are also in a way bound to time and will change throughout time.
Jeez.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, dude. There was a lot to unpack there. Holy shit. So when he says, so he has that daydream where he says this line, and
Yeah.
and that's at which point he help or a little help from my friend's place, right
Yeah.
around there, and that's happening. Like, is that like a similar thing that happened with the horse and the picture? Like he heard it, and then it became reality for his. or like he heard it in a dream and then he dreamt another dream where he was hearing that song.
The difficult thing with it is that this is all dreams within dreams that sometimes have other dreams within them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, one of the things is with that loop of sequences that happens is, basically George has kind of gotten to the point where, he's reached a peak of understanding. And it's in that moment where he basically is just wandering around this world that his brain created. He runs into an alien that's now basically running a shop in his old apartment.
Yeah.
And it's that alien that he talks to that, is basically like just kind of forcing him into a situation of just kind of peace and just going, you know what? Hey, we're all here together. And we're all here to help each other. Here, maybe what you're looking for has been right here all along. And he hands him a disc, which is, I get by with a little help from my friends. And George looks at it and he's like, yeah, my friends. Yeah. And then he goes to sleep. And then that's when he dreams of Heather. And then all shit gets real crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the very fucking end of the movie, basically, he relives his death, and then it's through that death that he gets reunited with Heather again.
Yeah.
And he basically is just restarting his relationship with her. And that's it.
It seems at the end of the movie he relives his death, and then he kind of gets a do-over with creating this dream reality for himself.
Yeah.
And he like fixes things, and the doctor's now like he's a little bit crazy, a little bit older.
Yeah.
But everything's kind of the way it was before he started seeing the doctor. But the doctor still remembers everything that's happened. It's really fucking crazy. So this is all happening in like a millisecond.
Yeah.
Right before he dies.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, potentially it could all lead to nothing. Or it could go on forever,
Yeah, his brain's just doing it. Like he's just like slowing down time so he can experience, and it just lasts forever.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Which is, that's what some people say heaven probably is anyway,
That's what I hope it is. You just trip forever.
A really weird dream world.
Yeah.
With
that never
dope
ends.
lights.
Yeah.
Same. I'd be down.
And I get to see Heather. And my apartment turns into an antique shop. That sounds rad.
That's also at the very end of that whole thing where everything loops back and it's a dream again. He now works at that antique shop.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the funniest thing. I was like, why does he work there?
I mean, he had to put his dream reality back pretty quick.
Yeah.
So he probably didn't have time to figure out all the details.
Yeah.
But I guess so he can still change reality, right? When he sleeps? Okay.
Yeah, that would never stop.
That never stops. So things could get worse again, knowing him.
Yeah.
Okay. Tight.
IMDb goofs. There is a truck in the background in one of the scenes that it spells mobile wrong. That's literally it.
Good catch.
It's that instead of spelling it Mobile, it's spelled Mobil. That's it.
That's it.
That's all you got.
Trivia.
Now, so there are some really interesting things about this, which is that this was the first made-for-TV movie to ever be shown on PBS.
Whoa.
So the one sequence where George has quote unquote fixed the race problem, there were 600 extras that were spray painted for that scene.
Wait, what?
600.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Spray painted.
Yeah. There was actually a famous sleep researcher who founded the Stanford Sleep Clinic and for many years taught popular sleep and dreams class at Stanford University, was actually a consultant for the book and is thanked in the closing credits.
His work paid off.
And the movie was unseen for 20 years because of a copyright issue where they played the Beatles record with a little help from my friends. The film was finally allowed to be recast, rebroadcast with Beatles version being replaced by a different vocalist, which is the version that we saw.
Yeah.
There's also an interesting thing in terms of so it's on a budget of $250,000.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And so one of the things is like what they wanted to do wasn't what they were capable of doing just because the budget was so steep. And so that's why, one of the things that they did was they hired this one artist, which his name is Ed Emschwiller, who is at that period of time was a really famous. Not only was he a very famous artist for the covers of magazines, like sci-fi magazines, but also he did a lot of science fiction novels in the 1980s. He was a staple of doing science fiction novels in the 1980s. And he was also working with a lot of really like avant-garde art film effects.
Huh.
And so that's where like all the shit that you see at the end of the movie, that is him.
And I thought the alien sequences were pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Trippy. Yeah.
All that shit's brilliant. And that's also, so one of the things that they had a major problem with is, they needed UFOs. And so the design of the UFOs was him as well.
Oh.
And so that's why they are basically like a really weird lighting effect as opposed to like a physical, anything, because they just didn't have the fucking budget for it.
They spent all the money on spray paint, gallons of spray paint.
on 600 fucking extras.
Yeah.
600.
That's fucked up.
I don't even think you could tell.
All right, so next week we're going to watch HBO's Behind the Candelabra.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sick.